In Greenville, Alabama, where Starbucks only serves black coffee, and folks believe white coats are for Sunday church officer Earl R. Butters, was having a day so uneventful it practically begged for drama. Sitting in his patrol car, left hand holding coffee as lukewarm as his third marriage, right hand, also holding coffee. So who was driving? That question mattered less than what he considered surveillance, which, by his definition, meant watching anyone non-white who drove better than him. At that moment, a sleek black Tesla Model X cruised through the intersection. Inside, two black women, white lab coats, hair neatly pinned, serious expressions. Earl raised an eyebrow, mumbling as if he'd just uncovered a national security threat. Tesla? In Greenville? Lab coats? Confident posture at this hour? Highly suspicious. With no real evidence, Earl convinced himself. Being a good cop means trusting your gut. And my gut is wrong exactly when it matters. So, without waiting any longer, he flipped on the lights, hit the siren, and shouted into his radio. Possible high-level organ trafficking suspects, requesting zero interference while I demonstrate individual initiative. No one responded, partly because no one had their radio on, mostly because everyone knew. When Earl Butters starts suspecting, it's time to suspect Earl. Officer Earl R. Butters stepped out of his patrol car like he was busting an international cartel. In truth, he'd simply seen two black women in a clean car which, according to his logic, was evidence item 1, 2, and 3. He approached the Tesla window, face set like he was guest starring on CSI, Greenville. Inside, sisters Dr. Brianna Bree Coles and Dr. Janine Coles were debating whether to perform an appendectomy or brain surgery first. The hospital had urgently paged both. Bree, behind the wheel, rolled the window down just as Earl barked. What kind of job makes you drive like hell this time of night? And what's with the hair? Gang-related? Janine, who didn't rattle, easily blinked 3 times, then replied, "We're doctors. That's just hair. And the only gang we know is ganglion cyst." The answer, medically accurate, gave Earl a brief pause. But instead of stepping back, he leaned further into delusion. He pointed at Brianna's cornrows, clean and tight, and announced like he'd uncovered a terrorist cell. "I've seen hair like that on Netflix. Guns, gangs, by theory alone. That hairstyle could kill." Janine leaned toward her sister and whispered, "I think he thinks your braids are bioweapons." Brianna, already 20 minutes late for a critical spinal surgery, calmly replied, "Officer, we're en route to City Medical. We have a patient in critical." Earl cut her off because the most dangerous thing to him was hearing a complete sentence. Everyone says they're saving lives, but this hair and this Tesla don't check out. Earl's worldview was as simple as his coffee. Black women dressed professionally. Suspicious. Driving a clean car. Suspicious. Good hair. Organized threat. So he picked up his radio, muted since 2007, and spoke into it with patriotic pride. "I need ID verification on 2 suspects. One has cornrows. One's wearing a lab coat for unknown reasons. Both are in possession of an alarming amount of intelligence." Meanwhile, Brianna discreetly started recording. Janine texted the hospital. "Held up by police. No cause. Please prepare backup." What none of them, not Earl, not Brianna, not Janine, knew was that this seemingly senseless delay was about to trigger something much bigger. Because the patient waiting for surgery at St. Maxwell General Hospital was Officer Earl Butters' daughter. A multi-vehicle accident on the federal highway. The most critical victim, Ellie Butters, 16 years old, cheer squad captain, and the beloved daughter of who else? Yes, Officer Earl R. Butters. In the ER, the attending doctor screamed into the phone like he had just discovered the entire hospital was out of anesthesia. "Call the Coles team immediately! Where are our top surgeons?" A nearby nurse whispered, They're being held up by a police officer. Something about hair." The emergency room went silent like the moment before a teacher hands back a test. Then, realizing the absurdity and gravity of the situation, the entire team erupted in chaos. Meanwhile, back at the scene, Officer Earl was still making Brianna and Janine Coles open the trunk to check for suspicious activity. Brianna pointed to a medical suitcase filled with surgical tools. "There's a scalpel, artery clamps, and a bit of human dignity." Earl, still not satisfied, tapped on the trunk as if trying to find drugs using intuition. Then his phone rang. A calm, firm female voice came through the line. "Officer Butters? This is the head nurse at St. Maxwell. Your daughter, Ellie Butters, was just brought into the ER after a serious accident. She needs surgery immediately." Earl froze. "Surgery? Now, who's the surgeon?" "We're waiting for the only two doctors capable of performing this procedure. The Coles sisters. Do you happen to know where they are?" Earl's face morphed from braid surveillance expert to man digging his own grave. He turned to Brianna and Janine, the same women he had just insulted, detained, threatened, and almost dragged onto the lawn for a seminar on braids and criminal behavior. Janine crossed her arms, eyebrow raised. "Need any medical assistance, officer?" Earl stammered, but only managed to sound like a car with bad brakes. Brianna, now removing her lab coat, smiled slightly and said, "Guess we'll just Uber home. If surgery has to wait, maybe your daughter can start getting cozy with Jesus." Earl flailed like a rookie swimmer dropped into the deep end. I didn't know. I didn't mean to. Janine cut him off, her tone dry. "You think we wore lab coats, had hospital badges, drove toward the ER because we're playing doctor?" Earl stood there, pride crumbling like an overcooked meringue. Finally, Brianna called the hospital. "This is Dr. Coles. We're on our way. Got held up by a cop." "Yeah, because of our hair." But the universe just smacked him straight. Earl remained motionless, still holding a blank citation. Janine leaned in. "Write the cause as temporary lack of oxygen to the brain. That's the clinical term." They drove off, sirens in the distance calling them back to their patient. And Officer Earl? He didn't get in his car, didn't finish the ticket, didn't speak. He just stood there, watching what people might call when karma arrives. In an ambulance. "Mom," she whispered, her voice dry like a forgotten snack left in a desk drawer for 3 days. There was no mom, only her dad. Officer Earl Butters slumped over the bedside, still wearing his police-issued GPS bracelet, as if to remind himself, "You used to uphold order. Now you need to hold your tongue first." Earl jolted awake at the sound of her voice, rushing to her side. "Ellie, you're awake. Oh, God, girl, you scared me half to death." Ellie tried to smile, but her scalp still ached from the fresh stitches, so the smile looked more like a drugged squint. "Dad, what happened? Why does my head feel cold and itchy like someone stopped scratching halfway?" Earl swallowed hard, tempted to throw out a harmless lie like, "Oh, you just slipped, sweetie." But then he remembered the 2 black women who had saved his daughter just after he had insulted and detained them. He took a deep breath. You were in a pileup. Traumatic brain injury. Minor. But you were saved. Ellie blinked. Who saved me? Some bald doctors? A nurse with Harry Potter glasses? Earl looked down, embarrassed. Two black women, Dr. Brianna and Dr. Janine Coles. And he swallowed again. I stopped them, on their way to your surgery, because I thought their hair looked suspicious. Ellie stared at him like she was hearing ancient mythology. You mean they were on their way to save me, and you pulled them over because their braids looked better than mine at prom? Earl nodded. Ellie lay still. Then, you know how I keep a journal, right? Earl nodded again. Tonight I'm writing. Today I survived a car crash and discovered my dad is the villain in a teen drama about prejudice and rookie-level ignorance. A knock on the door interrupted them. Two familiar silhouettes entered, Brianna and Janine Coles, still in white coats, but this time with their braids neatly tucked. If anyone dared accuse them of looking like gang leaders, they'd have to be the Harvard Medical Avengers. Brianna stepped forward, smiling warmly. Hey there, sunshine. Glad you woke up. We had to delay a whole podcast called Emergency Surgery and Braids, How to Multitask Without Getting Profiled because of you. Ellie chuckled, this time a real laugh that made her stitches flutter. You too? You saved me? Janine nodded. I stitched up your skull. Brianna kept your blood pressure from crashing lower than the public school sex ed budget. Earl leaned forward, about to speak probably, thank you, or I'm sorry, or I hereby resign from the hair profiling task force. But Brianna raised her hand. No need. The truth already spoke. Your daughter is awake. And you just learned a lesson no police academy teaches. Don't judge people by their hairstyle. Here Janine added, and if you must judge them by how many lives they save. Ellie looked at the two women, not just doctors, but living proof that kindness can triumph over ignorance. She exhaled. I'm growing my hair out, and I'm braiding it. Every day. If that scares people, even better. Janine grinned. We'll show you some top-tier styles. Gorgeous, but non-threatening, depending on the zip code. The entire room burst into laughter except for Earl, who was still wrestling with shame, but slowly starting to understand. 3 weeks after being discharged from the hospital, Ellie Butters had become a living legend at Hamilton High, not because of the accident, but because of the open letter she posted on Instagram, alongside a selfie of her new haircut. Pixie cut, asymmetrical trim, smoky purple ombre, and 2 lightning bolts shaved into the back. The caption read, My dad once said braids looked thuggish. Well, how about now, Dad? I'm rocking a haircut that screams, runs a tattoo parlor in a Tokyo alley. And I'm still the top student in AP Chemistry. The photo was shared over 87,000 times, hit the trending charts on Twitter under the hashtag #HairIsMe, and naturally forced Officer Earl Butters to deactivate Facebook and unfollow all his police academy buddies who kept tagging him in memes where his face was photoshopped onto a bar of soap. At school, Ellie walked through the gates like a TikTok star, arriving at the Met Gala. Classmates who used to call her the piano girl now parted like the Red Sea before Moses. One whispered, Yo, her hair's like Billie Eilish meets Cardi B, bruh. Even the disciplinarian dean who once made a student remove acrylic nails for being against school decorum could only look at Ellie and nod solemnly, as if her haircut itself was a well-argued AP thesis on personal freedom. But the climax came at the end-of-month school assembly, where Ellie, instead of just playing her usual piano solo, demanded the right to speak as a survivor and a proud rebel. At first, the principal refused, but after getting tagged in over 400 Instagram stories and a BuzzFeed headline that read, "When braids are more dangerous than drugs, only at Hamilton," he caved. Ellie stepped onto the stage wearing a T-shirt with her face printed on it before and after the accident. She lifted the mic like Beyoncé about to sing Freedom. "Hi, everyone," she began, her voice echoing through the mic. "I'm Ellie Butters. I survived a car crash, a brain surgery, and worst of all, a prejudice from the man I love the most, my dad." The auditorium held its breath. In the front row, Earl Butters sat twisting like a sun-dazed lizard, clutching a bouquet, a 1 foot crushing fallen fountain pens from students nearby. Ellie went on. "When I was into Hello Kitty hair clips, my dad said I looked cute. When I wore double-twist braids to my piano recital, he said nothing. But when 2 doctors with the same braids saved my life, he saw them as suspects." A collective "oh" rippled through the crowd. A teacher nearly dropped her Starbucks. "I'm not telling this story to shame my father," Ellie continued. "I'm telling it because there are things more dangerous than car accidents, like judging people just because of their hair. Hair can't drive. Hair can't commit crimes. Hair can't save lives. But it can get someone dismissed, suspected, or excluded. And that is on us." A freshman started crying, not clear if from emotion or sitting too close to the speaker. Ellie locked eyes with the crowd. "I used to think I needed long hair, a white dress, and good manners to be considered a good girl. But now I know to be myself, I only need a healthy brain, hair that doesn't ask for permission, and a community that dares to say no to prejudice." The entire auditorium erupted in applause. One teacher clapped so hard his pen snapped. A parent yelled, "Preach, girl!" And Earl Butters stood up, holding the bouquet like a Miss Universe contestant, tears filling his eyes. After that day, Ellie was invited onto a morning talk show. Teen Vogue ran a feature titled "Hair and Freedom: The Uprising of Ellie Butters." And as for Earl, he got assigned to a mandatory workshop called Cultural Diversity and How to Avoid TikTok Scandals. But the most important thing, Ellie knew she hadn't just survived the accident, she had come back to life, truly, in the way she chose. After the speech that shook all of Hamilton High, Earl Butters, also known as Officer Earl, strict but stubborn as concrete. Butters began to realize he was going viral online. Not the kind of viral where parent groups share pics of their star students, but the kind where people were sending each other clips of that dad who totally embarrassed his daughter on Instagram Live. Earl received 17 messages from co-workers just to ask, "Wait, are braids really a gang sign?" One recommendation letter from the police council titled "Mandatory Cultural Competency Training." And one reaction video from a 19-year-old TikToker in a fake cop uniform dancing while saying, "This is for you, Earl. Stop profiling. Start hugging." Meanwhile, Ellie only got more famous. She appeared on an NPR podcast, a morning talk show, and even got a 1-year shampoo sponsorship, just to flip her hair on camera. As for Earl, he was sitting down, typing the title for his very first YouTube video. From Prejudice to Perspective, a dad relearning how to human. He launched the channel with help from his nephew DJ Lemonade, a TikToker who sells vintage t-shirts and plays ukulele online. The first video opened with shaky footage, Earl holding the phone the wrong way, and his voice. Hey everyone. I'm Officer Earl Butters. I used to think braided hair meant suspicious behavior. But After my daughter nearly died and 2 braided-hair doctors saved her, I had a change of heart, a strong one. The first 10 seconds included 3 "ites" and 1 sneeze from the family dog. Earl recounted everything: the accident, the assembly, the moment he was pushed down to the audience like some shamed villain, and the questions he'd never asked before. If I look at someone and immediately feel suspicion because of their hair, is that my eye's fault, or my mind's? The 7-minute video had no music, no filters, but it resonated with millions. Within 48 hours, the clip hit 3.2 million views. The hashtag #EarlLearns exploded. A group of students made a fan page. Ellie's dad is a real one. Earl was invited to appear on a talk show with Ellie, where he solemnly said, "I don't judge people by their hair anymore. I only judge by their Spotify playlist. If you still listen to Nickelback, I have concerns." The studio audience roared with laughter. And then, something magical happened. One evening, Ellie walked past the living room and saw her dad typing out a new vlog script. On his Word doc, the title read, "Top 5 hairstyles I used to fear, but now think are actually pretty cool." She paused, then burst into laughter. "You know, Dad," Ellie said, "maybe you'll never fully understand. But the fact that you're trying, that's worth more than any apology." Earl looked up, resting his chin on his hand. "So, hey, Ellie, if I dyed my hair smoky purple like yours, you think I'd go viral again?" "Definitely. But also, definitely, Mom would kick you out." And so, from a stubborn father, Earl Butters became an accidental influencer. From unconscious bias to intentional understanding. From a redemption video to a man who dared to admit he had once been wrong. And to Ellie, that was more valuable than any gift, bouquet, or police department training course ever could be.